السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهد الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن نبينا وحبيبنا محمدا عبد الله ورسوله صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم وصفيه من خلقه وخليله. نشهد بأنه قد بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح الأمة وجعلها على المحجة البيضاء ليلها كنهارها لا يزيغ عنها إلا هالك. أما بعد، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله، وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. أما بعد، يقول الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه العزيز بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد. All thanks and praises are due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We bear witness and attest that there is no deity or divinity truly worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And we bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam is indeed the last and seal of messengers and prophets sent along a long list of prophets and messengers before him with the message of peace and mercy and compassion, with the message of human brotherhood, with the message of Tawheed, that is indeed the message of Islam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shower His blessings and peace upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, and upon his family and companions and all the true followers. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept us among those followers, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reunite us and gather us, inshallah, on the day of judgment and beyond, with the presence of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam in Jannatul Firdaus, inshallah. My dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As all of us live these difficult days and watch the anti-Muslim climate become increasingly hateful, increasingly pushing towards violence, even against Muslims, it is easy for many of us to feel gloomy, feel pessimistic, feel that, what worse could happen. However, my theory or my view, after looking at what is happening, is that actually, despite what seems to be very difficult times, and indeed they are, we actually are heading towards a really, inshallah, changing positively time. In other words, this could be actually one of the best opportunities for the Muslim community. And maybe it's a time or an opportunity for us as a community to shine. Because despite all the negativity, is actually, when we look beyond the horizon, we see actually the light of the dawn coming out of the darkest of the moments our country, and specifically our Muslim community, is enduring as we speak. And this is not to say or belittle the difficulty we're dealing with. I mean, obviously all of us are familiar with the impact of Islamophobia, and specifically the one we've seen on the rise during the election campaigning happening, whether it's presidential or even other levels. The reality is all known to all of us. Growing number of hate incidents, attempts against mosques. We just heard of some incident in LA. Only a couple of weeks ago, an incident targeting a masjid, possibly a masjid in Kansas. 3 people planning an attack on a Somali community and masjid. Alhamdulillah, both were foiled by law enforcement. We hear about attacks and vandalism against masajid. We hear about sisters in hijab being shouted at, hijabs pulled. We hear about increase in number of bullying against Muslims in schools. Anyone watching the news, especially social media, can attest to the growing anti-Muslim rhetoric to the point where it's actually threatening with violence. So I'm not oblivious to that fact. But despite that, I would say, if we look at the whole picture from different levels, there are 6 reasons, 6 factors that inshallah will indicate that the days to come after that are going to be days, inshallah, that the Muslim community would be able to shine and able to turn the tide, inshallah, from difficulty to ease. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Holy Quran, Inna ma'al usri yusra. Inna ma'al usri yusra. After hardship or with hardship comes ease. Indeed, or verily, with hardship, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us ease would come. So what are these factors? And of course, for the interest of time, I'll try to move quickly on them. The first factor is the demographic factor. Meaning, American Muslims are not a new or a temporary phenomenon. We're not a new phenomenon in America's history. American Muslims or Islam has existed in our country even before the founding of the country. Whether it's when the slaves were forced to come into this country, almost 1/3 of them being Muslim, forced to change their identity, give up their religion, but they're part and parcel of what constitute the history, the founding of our country. There are stories of early immigrants coming in, early converts in the history of our country. We all know about the Jefferson's Quran, the copy of the Quran that he used, took notes of as they were writing documents that would impact the future of our country. We look at the current affairs, current numbers and demographics of Muslims. It's not a small number. It's a 6 million and growing number. It is one of the most educated communities in this country. It is the youngest religious community in this country, meaning the whole energy is behind it. It is actually one with the highest level of income, second highest level of income, per capita I'm talking about. If somebody is wondering, say, hey, how come I don't feel that wealthy? Well, the one next to you might, on both sides. The reality is this community, mashallah, is professional. This community has doctors, engineers, business owners, teachers, nurses, at every level helping and contributing to the progress and the growth of this country. At every level, politically, academically, arts, sports, invention, entrepreneurship, and you name it, at every level. And it's seen. You know, they say about 8 to 10% of physicians in our country are Muslim. Chances are, when a fellow American goes to see his or her doctor, there's 1 per 10% chance that his or her physician is Muslim. So, the attempts to demonize that community cannot last. You know, it worked when people didn't know of Muslims, when Muslims were not visible. As Muslims become more visible at every level now, with their energy and all of that, demographically, as I'm saying, inshallah, that will turn the tide. That's the first factor, as I would say. Second factor is the changing political map. What do I mean by that? Internally and externally. Within the Muslim community, I can tell you only 20 years ago, many Muslims were debating whether to vote or not. Don't ask me why, but somehow, for those of you who are young, you might be shocked now. Yes, there were times when American Muslims were debating whether there's any usefulness, any benefit in participating in what they deem to be a system that is rigged. And there might be some truth sometimes when politicians play games, or corporations and all of that try to influence our government. But that is only a result of the absence of participation of those who care. This is not a built-in system where corruption would succeed. Corruption would always succeed in our political system when people who are against corruption take time off, take a break. Say, you know what, we have nothing to do with it. So, as Muslims now realize the importance of their vote, of them organizing, we're already reaping the fruits. I can tell you, maybe 10, 15 years ago, most politicians would avoid being around the Muslim community, would not want to be anywhere near the Muslim community. Actually, you all know the stories of politicians who would return donation money, campaign donation money, when it came from Muslims, to be safe from attacks that they are friendly to Muslims. Today is exactly the opposite, especially in many states that are known to be progressive, such as California, where actually candidates now compete for the Muslim votes and ask, what do you need me to say and do? What are the issues of importance to you to get your endorsement? And I'm dealing with it. I can share with you many examples where now they feel the vote of the Muslim community is important. You cannot ignore it. If you live in the state of California, if you're planning to run for office anywhere in the state of California, almost any major city in the state of California, you can certainly not ignore the Muslim community, and definitely not upset them. There are 1 million Muslims in the state of California, out of 33. That is not a number you want to ignore. That is internally. Externally is, we're no longer alone. Actually, now we have many allies who realize that our fate, or our respective fates actually, in our country is interdependent. If we allow for the anti-Muslim bigots to get away with their bigotry, they realize that the next group would be the Jewish community, the Mormon community, the Irish American, the Latino community, the immigrant community, the African American community, the Asian community. People realize that when it comes to bigotry, when it comes to having equal access and equal opportunities, we're all in it together. So now we have many people who are standing by the Muslim community, sometimes ahead of us on these issues. And despite the fact, the important political change that we're noticing is that people are getting fed up with political, hateful rhetoric. When for many years people have maybe remained silent or were maybe complicit with the anti-Muslim attack, now that when they hear things coming from Trump or others are jumping in, including Republicans, ironically. When Paul Ryan, when the spokesman, the Speaker of the House, when Colin Powell, when the Bush family, when people who are Republican with long history of loyalty stand up, is because many people are realizing that unless a line is drawn, this is going to impact not just American Muslims, but actually the future of civility in our country, the future of harmony in our country. And if they don't have those good intentions, they would worry about actually being able to attract people to their political parties if they are deemed to be silent. Example of that, look at one of the most recent big political events. What happened at the Democratic National Convention? One of the most visible, one of the most prominent sessions and speeches during the convention was which one? Khan family. Khizr and Ghazala Khan, right? When they spoke. This was the most popular, most viewed segment at the event. And this is not to say one party is better than the other. This is obviously not a political campaign. But this is to show the importance of how central the issue of Islam and Muslims has become. On one side, some people, they do it through demonization, and maybe others use it to show that, hey, we're standing up for what is right in America. So that is important when others are realizing that bigotry can no longer be allowed to go unchecked and unchallenged. The reality is, this is a factor that's going to make things easier for us. We're no longer at the front line fighting against anti-Muslim bigotry or bigotry at large alone. We're looking at many allies, not just from the progressive fringe, but actually progressive middle ground, centrist, even mainstream politicians on both sides of the aisle. The third factor is the fact history tells us that bigotry and racism against a whole group of people does not last. What I'm talking about is, if you think, and I know many times we do think that what we're facing is something that never happened in the history of America. The reality is what we're facing is truly a minute fraction of what other communities had to endure in the history of our country. And if you're in doubt, go study the history of Native Americans. See the genocide that happened against Native Americans. Learn about what happened and continues to happen to the black community. From slavery to segregation to racism, lack of rights to vote, rights to have jobs, to police brutality against African American young males now around the country. And if you think what we're facing today is bad, just read that history and you would realize. I can tell you, despite all the anti-Muslim hate, alhamdulillah, we're not talking about the lynching of Muslims. We're not talking about internment camps or concentration camps like what the Japanese American had to endure during World War II. We're not talking about the racism that the Jewish community had to endure in the 20s and the 30s of past century. We're not talking about what the Catholics had to endure. You know, we face similar aspects of it, which is basically racism is the same. It just targets different people. But in all the examples of racism in the history of our country, the one common factor that we see is the fact that these communities refuse to be victims. These communities organized. These communities decided to fight back, make alliances, register to vote, change laws, challenge abusive laws through court or through advocacy. Challenge abuse against them, not accept abuse, and not accept to be treated as second-class citizens. That struggle continues. It doesn't mean they've achieved it now. But the point is, my dear brothers and sisters, in all these cases, they fought back and things changed. With all the anti-black racism that exists in our country, let's face it, who is our president? Obama. He's black. Well, according to some he's not, but he's black, right? And according to some he's Muslim also. The reality is we have a black president, a black attorney general, a black secretary of DHS. So the reality is the racism of the past might not have ended, but the institutional racism has been undermined, has been challenged. Same thing with the Latino communities, the Asian American community, the Jewish community, and many other communities. History in America tells us that if you organize, you have faith, you have confidence, you continue to fight for your rights, build alliances, eventually you get attention. Eventually, what is wrong gets challenged. So do not despair. Alhamdulillah, actually we are in this phase where we're actually making that difference as American Muslims. The fourth factor that gives me glad tidings, that gives us hope, that inshallah the days and the years to come are going to be bright, bi'idhnillah ta'ala with Allah's will, is the fact no matter who wins today in America, whether it's Trump or Hillary or me, although I'm not running. Whoever wins, things are not going to be bad as we think they will be. Anyway, most of the damage has been done, by the way, with Trump. So whether he wins or not, whether Hillary wins or not, whether it's a third candidate, it's not going to make a huge difference in terms of changing anything in a permanent way. Because what supersedes whatever happens at the executive branch is one document that protects our rights. And that document is the Constitution, right? No matter who's there, they're not going to be able to annul or eliminate your freedom of speech, freedom of religion. That First Amendment is there to stay. So yes, a president might come in, maybe pass a couple of executive orders and decisions that will make it difficult for one person, one organization, one area, one masjid maybe if he goes crazy, but he cannot deny us our freedoms. That would be challenged through the law, through advocacy, easily. So bi'idhnillah ta'ala, with Allah's help, let's not worry and exaggerate the threats. And I'm not saying don't be on the lookout, don't be prepared, don't be organized. I'm not saying lower your guards and go get a nap. But what I'm saying is, let's be hopeful and let's be realistic that no matter who comes, things are bound. There's a ceiling on how much damage they can do. They can poison the atmosphere, in a sense, make it very difficult for harmony in our country among people, create polarization, hatred. But that's where actually it becomes the duty of every American, every religious community, every ethnic community to play a role in challenging that bigotry and division that will come as a result. And by the way, that could come either way, whoever wins. If Trump wins, he might be empowered to do more, and if he loses, his supporters might be angry that the fact that he lost and then start taking their anger at certain community. So don't look at things in a polarized way. Look at it in a long-term way, and inshallah, no matter what, there is that ceiling that will always protect American citizens and people in America. The other factor that I want to make sure we keep in mind when we're talking about the Constitution, it is the fact that it is important to put things in perspective also globally. As American Muslims, alhamdulillah, we enjoy so many rights, so many protections given to everyone in America in ways that actually many other communities, many Muslims don't have, even our brothers and sisters in Canada, Canadian Muslims, even in Europe, and definitely not in so-called Muslim majority countries. The rights that we enjoy are things that also as part of an amana, a trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon us. Because with what Allah gives, there is a due to pay. There is a tax to pay. When you're given rights, when you're given security, when you're given ability to practice your religion freely, to a great extent, there is a responsibility towards you. To make sure you protect that for yourself and others. To make sure that no one changes that. And to make sure that you advocate for justice for all. If you're debating whether things are difficult for us or easy, I suggest you ask the Rohingyas in Burma how things are for them. Ask the brothers and sisters in Kashmir. Ask people in Syria. Ask them in Palestine. Ask them in many places around the world. Do they feel safe for their children? Do they feel safe to pray? Do they feel safe to keep their identity? Ask the people of Mosul in Iraq. And the list goes on and on. So alhamdulillah, we are blessed with that peace, with that security, and those rights. That means we have to advocate and we'll continue to organize, inshallah, to make a difference for ourselves as well as for others. The fifth factor is the fact that we are surrounded by people in general, fellow Americans, who do not hold deeply rooted hatred toward Islam and Muslims. Don't get fooled by the polls and the surveys. The surveys show some anti-Muslim or maybe unfavorable views towards Islam and Muslims. But that's a result of daily bombardment with misinformation about Islam. And mainly impacting people who have not had an engagement or knowledge of Islam and Muslims. So they're easily susceptible to this messaging. That will not last forever because it's not, as I said, it's not based on a long history. In general, our country did not have a long history of colonialism against Muslims the way Europeans had. There wasn't a crusade fight that exists. So it is not in the psyche. It is not in the psyche. The wars that existed before, by the way, whether it's Afghanistan or Iraq, had always involved Muslims on both sides. We went to war, and of course, you know my views. These wars are immoral and illegal. But for historical purposes, when we went to war, there were Muslims on both sides, with us and against us. So it wasn't like us versus Muslims. So it is much easier, once we engage and educate the public, to realize that much of what is being said about Islam and Muslims, just a bunch of lies, being pushed by an industry that profits out of this hatred and division in this country. People who profit by selling weapons and pushing for wars and creating division and hatred in our country, either because of their ideological reasons or quite often financial reasons. So the average person in America is very open to engaging Muslims and learning about Islam and Muslims. Examples of that, I've talked about it maybe at the last khutbah a couple of months ago. But I'll give you more examples. I talked about how our country was willing and ready and happy to embrace the legacy of what is considered to be one of the most popular American heroes in recent times. And who am I talking about? Muhammad Ali, rahimahullah, right? Muhammad Ali, I can't think of someone we can define and represent more Muslim than him in the history of this country. At least in our recent time. Maybe Malcolm X before that. Muhammad Ali named, stood by his values, challenged racism, challenged illegal war, was very unpopular at one point, but then people realized what he stood for was right. And everybody embraced him. Maybe a small percentage of people didn't like him. But overwhelmingly, people knew he's Muslim. Same thing with Ibtihaj Muhammad, the fencer, the Olympic fencer representing the country, in her hijab, right? People knew she's Muslim. And they embraced her. They celebrated her. Think about Ilhan Omar, who ran for office at the state capital in Minnesota, who won the primary in June, and is probably destined or on the way to becoming the first Muslim Somali American sister in hijab to make it into a state capital, the state congress basically. She would win. This is history. Her district does not have a majority Muslim by any means, meaning the people who voted for her, who are a majority of other faith groups, knew she's Muslim, saw she's Muslim, and they were willing to embrace her. Same thing with Keith Allison and Andrew Carson and many other examples at many local levels. Many Muslim mayors around the country. We had them in the city of Bell, city of Artesia. Muslims voted by people who are of other faith groups, but they realized that these people hold good values, good service, good intentions toward their citizens and residents and fellow citizens and residents of their cities and districts. So the reality is, despite all the propaganda, people in America are open, are willing to embrace their fellow American Muslims, their fellow Americans who happen to be Muslim, in the most positive of way. So don't let Islamophobia trick you. Islamophobia would like for you to think there is animosity by the public against you, and to let the rest of America think that we and the others cannot be together. Alhamdulillah, actually, the examples of how Muslims and others have worked together and continue to work together are many. So this is the glad tiding, this is the fifth factor. What I wanted to share is the last factor why I think it is a positive time for us. It's a time for the American Muslim community to shine. As I said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Inna ma'al usri yusra. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also told us, In tansurullaha yansurkum. If you stand by Allah's values, what Allah wants from you to stand for, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will stand by you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put blessings in your effort. If we only think Islam is about something to come to the masjid and pray and mind my own business and not worry about the injustices around me or the poverty around me, if that's what it is, if we think Islam is that or believing is that, then we're failing. We will never get Allah's support. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, أم حسبتم أن تدخلوا الجنة ولما يأتكم نبأ الذين خلوا من قبلكم مثل الذين خلوا من قبلكم مستهم البأساء والضراء وزلزلوا حتى يقول الرسول والذين معه متى نصر الله ألا إن نصر الله قريب. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the verse from Surah Al-Baqarah where he asked, did you think that you will be allowed to enter paradise, heaven, Jannah, without going through what others have gone through in terms of tests? Until you go through the test of poverty, of hardship, even your ground shaken underneath you, physically or actually symbolically, meaning you're shaken out of fear. The fact that you're a Muslim is being challenged now. Did you think you would be allowed to enter Jannah without going through these tests? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes and says, even at that point, even the messengers of that time and the believers who are around them, even the messenger of that time and the believers around them wonder, how much longer is it going to take before Allah's support would come? And then Allah answers them. He said, indeed, verily, Allah's support is very near. But you have to pass those tests. You have to show not just patience and perseverance, but it means you have to, when you're facing these challenges, this is how Allah filters us. Because all of us, as we all say, we always claim to be believers. But the true believers are the ones who make a difference in their lives and others in a positive way. So this is actually the key point in changing our times now. If we organize, if we realign our values to make sure that they follow Islamic values of standing for truth, for justice, for equality for all people, for freedom for all people, to make sure that we're part of making that positive change, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as He has promised, and as every factor ahead of us is telling us, will turn this time around and make this a shining moment for American Muslims. So fellow Americans would respect and value the presence of American Muslims and their contribution to our country. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among those, inshallah, to not just wait for the positive change to happen, but be part of bringing that change. With that, I conclude by reminding my dear brothers and sisters about couple of things that are important to all of us. One, we're only a few days away from the election, November 8th. Only a few days away from that. And this is an important election. First of all, no one should think that their vote is irrelevant. If you decide not to vote in a certain race, if you're not sure which congressional candidate or city council candidate is better, skip that race. That's okay. You don't have to vote on every one of them. Although if you spend the time, you should be able to see a difference between a candidate and the other. A proposition, voting yes or no. You cannot tell me there is no difference. And if you feel for a race, maybe it is, skip it and go to the other races. There are so many places and races and propositions that are there that will impact the quality of life in our country. You cannot ignore it. You don't live on a separate island. By not voting for what is right, you're empowering what is wrong. That's the reality. Your vote is never zero. Your vote is either plus or negative. By not voting, you're just making it easier for the negative. That's how it is in math. So you have to get yourself educated, know the issues, find out who are the candidates and what they stand for. Again, most of us, when we think election, we're only thinking about presidential. And you might have already made up your mind. And you think that's it. Well, there are many other races that require attention. CARE as a non-profit organization cannot endorse candidates, like the masjid. However, we can have recommendations when it comes to the propositions. So on your way out, inshallah, you can pick up from Sister Asma. There's a voter guide that CARE produces and makes available at every election. So I hope you can pick it up and at least get aware of how elected officials voted on issues of importance to us at the Congress level, State Senate level, and State Assembly. So though we don't tell you who we endorse, but at least we inform you for these candidates. But you can do your homework. Whatever your inclinations might be, you can do and research and find what these organizations are saying about these candidates so you can be an informed voter. This is how we can change how politicians look at the Muslim community. Then they know that they have to respect the Muslim community, or at least fear the headache that will come out of the Muslim community voting for their opponents. The second issue is the CARE annual banquet that happens every year, as you know. This year is CARE's 20th anniversary. For 20 years, alhamdulillah, this community has stood by the work of CARE. You've made CARE reach to the level that it is now, to become the most visible, the most effective advocacy and civil rights organization speaking on behalf of American Muslims in the country. Alhamdulillah, you allowed CARE to be independent. We don't get government money. We don't go and try to sell our opinion and views based on who pays more. Because we can afford that, because the community has supported. So I ask you to continue to support CARE. So it can be a true voice in challenging Islamophobia, educating about Islam, protecting the civil rights of Muslims, working with media to make sure there's a fair and accurate portrayal of Muslims in the media. But that could only happen. We can only empower the community when we empower our organization. So I hope all of you will plan to attend, inshallah, and continue to support. Don't think I'm too busy. Don't think someone else will do it. If each one of us think others will do it, we're only delaying our ability to change the negative state of affairs we're all witnessing nowadays. Because it is in our hand. I can tell you, there is absolutely no hurdle, with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to change what we're in today. There is absolutely no hurdle except us. Wallah, we are the only hurdle between us and making that change. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Don't worry about the Islamophobes. Don't worry about anti-Muslim comments and politicians. We can change if we decide to organize and support the effort to change. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless you, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us to what is right, and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our shortcomings. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروا فيا فوز المستغفرين. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله أما بعد. Inshallah, before we do a very quick announcement from the community, from the masjid. As you know, the masjid organizes the Halloween, not to be confused with Halloween, on Monday, October 31st, between 5 and 8. So it's time to bring your kids. There will be a lot of fun activities, inshallah, in a good Islamic environment. The flyers are outside. The Pillars Academy, the school here, is organizing a bake sale. It's outside to raise money for the school. Please visit their table outside and enjoy the good baking and support the important work of Pillars Academy. Also, the Pillars Academy is having an open house on November 30th for their new infant program. So please also don't forget to stop by and get some of that info from them. Important announcement, as Thanksgiving is coming through, OCIF has a tradition to working with other faith groups in the area, including Temple Beth El and the Shepherd of the Hills Church in the area, to work together to help feeding those who are less fortunate than us. So there will be a gathering at the masjid here on Sunday, November 20th, to help prepare 200 food baskets. So if you can volunteer and help with that, it will be greatly appreciated. Inshallah, get a lot of rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember, people need our help, and there's a great chance for us to work with our friends, brothers and sisters from other communities. Also save the date for OCIF Bazaar. It's coming up, inshallah, on Saturday, December 10th. All vendors are allowed to encourage to contact the masjid to get information on how to participate. Don't forget, tonight there will be the Friday Quran class and the youth group at the masjid. With that, we'll conclude, inshallah, with the dua. عباد الله إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد كما صليت وسلمت وباركت على سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم اقسم لنا من خشيتك ما تحول به بيننا وبين معصيتك ومن طاعتك ما تبلغنا به جنتك ومن اليقين ما تهون به علينا مصائب الدنيا. اللهم متعنا بأسماعنا وأبصارنا وقواتنا وذرياتنا أبدا ما أحيتنا واجعله الوارث منا واجعل ثارنا على من ظلمنا. اللهم لا تسلط علينا بذنوبنا من لا يخافك فينا ولا يرحمنا. اللهم نسألك الجنة وما قرب إليها من قول وعمل ونعوذ بك من النار وما قرب إليها من قول وعمل. اللهم نسألك أن تشفي مرضانا وترحم موتانا، ونخص بالذكر الأخ يوسف البابا الذي توفي في لبنان، وهو أخ للأخ محمد البابا رحمة الله عليه. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن يتغمده برحمته وأن يرزق أهله الصبر والأجر إن شاء الله تعالى. We ask Allah to forgive all of our dead people and grant cure to all those who are deceased, those who are ill and sick, inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and maghfirah to all those who are diseased. Also, ندعو الله سبحانه وتعالى أن يرفع البلاء عن إخواننا المستضعفين في كل مكان، ونخص بالذكر دائما وأبدا إخواننا في سوريا وفي فلسطين وفي العراق وفي الصومال وفي أفغانستان وباكستان والهند وبنغلاديش، ونخص بالذكر إخواننا في مصر وليبيا وإخواننا في بورما روهينجياز وفي كل مكان يظلم فيه المسلمون. اللهم كن معهم ولا تكن عليهم اللهم من أراد بهم وبالمسلمين خيرا فوفقه إلى كل خير، ومن أراد بهم شرا وضرا فخذه أخذ عزيز مقتدر. اللهم انصر إخواننا في حلب، اللهم احمي إخواننا في حلب وفي الموصل من شر المجرمين، سواء سموا أنفسهم داعش أو الحشد الشعبي، وكلاهما مجرم أكثر من الآخر. اللهم نسألك أن تحميهم وتحمي نفوسهم وأرواحهم وأملاكهم وأهلهم ومحبيهم وأولادهم من كل سوء. ونسألك سبحانك وتعالى، نسألك يا الله أن تحمي وترفق بإخواننا في حلب وفي سائر أرض سوريا وفي غزة وفي بيت المقدس، إنك على ذلك قدير يا أرحم الراحمين. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأقم الصلاة.